All right, so this is the second video for section 4.1. So if you haven't watched the first part, please do that. But if you have, you're in the right spot. Okay, so let's look at example 3a here. Okay, so we have this picture of this graph, and we're just going to kind of improvise a little bit. We're just going to assume this is 2, this is 1, this is -1, this is -2, this is -3. Okay, just to make our lives a little bit easier. And then we're also going to assume that this here is -2 something. And this point down here is, let's just say it's 1 something. Okay, so now we have the x values at all these critical points. Okay, we're going to look at this picture and we're going to determine when this graph is increasing and when it's decreasing. And we're going to use interval notation here. Okay, we're not going to use to the left of and to the right half that the book showed us. And then we're going to find when f of x is greater than 0 and when f of x is less than 0. Okay, now remember, f of x is the same thing as y. So when is the y value greater than 0 and when is the y value less than 0? Okay, so let's look at this and let's do increasing and decreasing first. So if we look at this graph, we see that we're increasing from here up to this point, okay? We stop increasing at this point. So we could say that we're increasing, once again in interval notation, from -infinity to -2. Okay, now we're not increasing or decreasing at -2, so that's why we have these open brackets. All right, and then we decrease from here to here. Okay, so I can say we're decreasing from when x equals -2 to x equals 1. And then once again, from here, now we're increasing again. So probably forever. So we're increasing then from 1 to infinity. Okay, so that's how I'd write that in increasing and decreasing notation. Let me get rid of this highlighted stuff. Okay, now when we want to find out when is the y value greater than 0. Okay, well notice the y value is greater than 0 from here to here. Okay, all these y values are greater than 0, and once again up here. Remember, the y value is greater than 0 when we're above the x-axis. Okay, so we would write we're greater than 0 when -3 is less than x, which is less than -1. And if this point here is -2, when x is greater than -2. Okay, that's when we are above the x-axis, or when our y value is positive. Okay, now when our y value is less than 0, that's when we are below. So we're below the x-axis here, and we're below the x-axis here. Okay, so we would say we're below the x-axis when x is less than -3, and between -1 and 2. So -1 less than x, which is less than 2. Okay, so that's how we do that. Now, when it says use the graph to describe the degree and leading coefficient of f. Now, we don't know if this is a degree 3 or 5 or 7 or what. All we can tell by looking at this is that it is odd. We're assuming this keeps going and this keeps going here. Okay, so we know it is an odd degree. Okay, and if we look like this, something like this, okay, we know that the a value, if you want to call it the a value, but we know that the leading coefficient is going to be positive. Okay, because if it weren't, it would do this number. Okay, so odd degree, leading coefficient positive, that's all we can tell. All right, let's label some critical points here. And guys, on a test or a quiz, this will obviously be a lot easier and some nicer points. Okay, let's just say this is -2. And then let's say this is, right here's the x value is -1. And if this is 1, let's say this is, I don't know, 0.75. And this is 2.25. And then let's pretend right here is at 1.5. Okay, now I want you to go ahead and try this one on your own. Try to find out when it's increasing, when it's decreasing, and when f of x is greater than 0 and when f of x is less than 0. Remember, this is when the y value is greater than 0 and when the y value is less than 0. So go ahead and try this on your own. Pause this, try it on your own, and then we'll go over it. All right, so what you should have gotten is that we are increasing from this point to this point. Okay, so from -1 to when x is 1.5. So we just put that in brackets from -1 to 1.5. Okay, and we are decreasing all the other ways. So all the way from -infinity to -1, which is here, and then from 1.5 all the way to infinity, because we're doing x values. So that would be that one. Okay, now when we're talking about when y value is greater than 0, when f of x is greater than 0, the y value is greater than 0. So it's greater than 0 from here all the way up because it keeps going up, 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 up. So when x is less than -2, and then also this hump right here between 0.75 and 2.25. So we write that over here. And then it's less than 0 all the way in this hump here from -2 to 0.75, so that's that. And then once again, after 2.25 or when we're greater than 2.25, once again our y value is negative. Okay, what we can get from this graph is that we have an odd power and a leading coefficient that is negative. All right, so on example 4, we're actually going to sketch this given what we have. Okay, so I always start with just a sketch before I put it on the nice over here, and this doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be to scale, it's just to kind of give us a visual. Okay, now I always like to look at when my f of x is greater than 0 and when it's less than 0, because when we transfer from greater than to less than, that's just our x-intercept. Okay, so I know we have an x-intercept at -2, and I know we go from above to below again at 3. So 3. And then again at 5. So 4, 5. So there's my 5. Okay, and then I always check this just to make sure. So -2, 3, and 5. We have everything covered. Okay, now I look at when is f increasing and when it is decreasing. Okay, so it is increasing when x is less than 0. So I can go up here, okay, and it's increasing, increasing, increasing. Now at 0, I know it goes from increasing to decreasing. So it's going to decrease from 0 to 4. But remember, it has to pass through this point. So it's decreasing, decreasing, decreasing until we get to 4. And then at that point, we are increasing again after 4, but we have to go through this 5. So we're doing something like this. Okay, after I have my sketch, okay, I can transfer it over. So I know it does this, and it doesn't matter how far down we go. Something like that is perfect. Okay,